It's that man again. Despite his meandering maneuverability, his strategical susceptibility, his infantile indefatigability, and his tendency towards tactical stupidity, he still remains.
And the imaginary sound of music. And the imaginary sound of music.
We've all heard of basic plays and skits. However, in the early 1800s, people wanted something different, and that is exactly what vaudeville brought to the table. Wait, can I start over?
Wait, what? Why?
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
The word vaudeville is derived from an old French term for a satirical song, vaudeville, which is a reference to the Vire Valley of France, where the songs originated. Before movies could talk, there were endless opportunities in vaudeville for those who had talent to make a living performing in front of live audiences. Singers, dancers, actors, and comedians were the backbone of the traveling show. It was originally created in 1881 by Tony Pastor and was called the Straight Clean Variety Show. In the beginning, it was intended for only male audiences due to it being obscenely comical. Consequently, it was a competitor with striptease. It later appealed to families and gained a wider variety of audience. In fact, it was known as the first type of theater to break racial and class boundaries. It was so successful that it encouraged other shows to do the same. Many actors became popular through vaudeville, including Charlie Chaplin and Bob Hope. Beginning in the 1800s through the 1920s, vaudeville was considered America's #1 form of entertainment. It was home to 25,000 performers consisting of anyone who could keep an audience's attention for more than 3 minutes. Performances in vaudeville ranged from the truly talented to simply quirky. There were musicians such as the piano player U.B. Blake and the child star Baby Rose Marie. There were great acts of physical talent as well, everything from contortionists to tumblers and dancers, such as the Nicholas Brothers. Actors performed plays, magicians put on shows, jugglers juggled, but the real focus of vaudeville was comedy.
We'll just pretend. All right, I'll take it easy with that. We'll just pretend.
Great comic acts such as Wilton Berg and Burns and Allen brought in the biggest crowds. From the local small-town stage to New York's Palace Theater, vaudeville was an essential part of every community. Vaudeville was symbolic of the cultural diversity of the early 20th century America. It was a fusion of centuries-old cultural traditions, including English music hall and Yiddish theater. By the end of the 19th century, the era of vaudeville was managed by only Tony Pastor. And since they were in the same time frame, the Great Depression ended up hurting the audience, and it ended at the end of World War II. One of the most famous acts in vaudeville was called Painless Parker. He was a first street performing dentist that would use a stooge on stage and pretend to pull out their teeth painlessly. However, it was all just an act, and people found out that when they went to get their teeth pulled by Parker, they experienced excruciating pain. He used Spangled Girl, brass band, and contortionists to lure people in. He later became wanted and died in 1952. Another famous act of vaudeville was Cannonball Richard. He started off his career by having people punch him in the gut. He was even hit by a heavyweight boxing champion, Jack Dempsey. He allowed people to jump on him, and some people even used sledgehammers. He was finally shot in the belly with a cannonball.
I just realized we have to do a synopsis about the thing that the Theater 2 people are doing. So I'm gonna have to talk about Abbott and Costello for a bit. What they're performing is Who's On First. So I can't really explain it because it's such a short skit. So I'm just gonna give you some background information about Abbott and Costello. Abbott and Costello were basically the discount Luigi in Super Mario Brothers Super Show cartoon, or whatever it's called.
With the Mario Brothers and plumbing's a game, we're not like the others who get all the fame.
And John Belushi of Saturday Night Live fame.
I'm a zit. Get it?
Both Abbott and Costello were inspired by and greatly admired Charlie Chaplin, also known as Hitler with a Hat. After the vaudeville era, they began to make their own films for Universal Studios, including Hold That Ghost, In the Navy, Pardon My Sarong, The Naughty 90s, and finally, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. In this movie, they battled famous Universal characters which they conveniently had the rights to, such as Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman. Their box office status began to slip during the early 50s, so they found renewed popularity on television. They finally started their own show called The Abbott and Costello Show. Their final film was in 1956, and it was called Dance With Me, Henry. Costello reprised some of his old routines on The Steve Allen Show. Abbott decided to team with another comic called Candy Candido, so they essentially broke up, and that's the end of their long-lasting legacy.